I'm going to be showing you the basics of scripting in Roblox Studio. If you're completely new to Roblox Studio, I highly recommend you go ahead and check out my first video, which I linked down below, which is a complete beginner's tutorial to Roblox Studio. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into place by clicking over here on base plate. Alright, so now we're in our place. So the first three things you have to have on are the Explorer, Properties, and Output tabs. If you don't see any one of these, you could go ahead and turn them on by going over here on Explorer, right here on Properties. And if you don't see the output, go over here to the Script tab and turn on the output. So now let's go ahead and go into our first script. We could go over here to the Explorer, go down to Server Script Service, go ahead and click on the plus sign, and add in a script. So this is our first script right here. So the first thing I'm going to be going over are prints. So if we notice here that Roblox has automatically added print hello world to our script. So what printing does is it's going to basically print whatever is in here to the output. So you can go ahead and test that out by going over here on playtest. Now if we look in our output, we can see it printed hello world. So let's stop. We can also go ahead and print numbers. So if we go here, enter, we could go ahead and type out print. And now we use a parentheses. Now we put, let's say, 4. It's going to first print out hello world, and then it's going to print 4. So if we test our game, you can see in the output, it printed hello world, and then it printed 4. So this is a perfect time to talk about how a script is read. So your script is read from top to bottom. So that's exactly why in our output, we can see it printed hello world first, and then it printed 4. Alright, now let's talk about data types. So in our script, we have two data types, which are a string and a number. A string is text that is in between two quotation marks. So right now, we're printing out the string hello world. If we were to remove the quotation marks, now we cannot print out hello world because the script doesn't know what this is. So if we were to go ahead and try to playtest our game, it's going to error. So we could just go ahead and add back the quotation marks in between the text. And that's going to make it back into a string, which is going to tell our script that this is just text, and we could go ahead and print it. Our script already knows what a number is. That's why we don't have to put any special characters in between them to identify them as a number. So here I've set up 4 print statements. So what I want you to do is to figure out which of these print statements has the error. So go ahead and pause the video right now and give your best guess. Alright, you logged in your answer. So your first guess could have been the first print, which is a number, but it's in between two quotation marks, which is completely fine. All this is going to do is turn the 12 from a number data type into a string data type. You might have also guessed down here on the last print, which has an error mark, but this print is completely fine. The error comes from the third print. As we can see here, it has 2 parentheses, but only ends off in 1 parentheses. That means this print is still open. So we could go ahead and close the print by adding in another parentheses, which is going to fix the problem. And now if we go to playtest, we can see that all of our prints go through. Alright, now let's talk about the third data type, which are variables. We could go ahead and create a variable by typing local, then the name of the variable, let's call it x, and then equal to a value which is going to be 1. So now we made x be the same as 1. So now if we go ahead and print x, now we don't get an error because our script knows that now x is going to be equal to 1. So if we go ahead and playtest our game, we can see in the output, it printed 1, which is what x is. So remember, to make a variable, we need to do local, then the name of the variable equal to a value. So let's say you wanted to keep this as a reminder in your script. You could go ahead and do that by going over here and adding 2 dashes, which is going to comment out this line right here, making it read only. So if we playtest our game, our script won't error because this isn't part of the script and it's just a comment. Alright, now I want to go ahead and talk about how to do basic math. So we can add with the plus sign, subtract with the minus sign, multiply with the asterisk, and divide with the slash. So we could go ahead and print 1 plus 1, which is going to give us 2. Print 2 minus 1, which is going to give us 1. Print 4 times 2, which is going to give us 8. And print 8 divided by 4, which is going to give us 2. So if we run our game, we can see all the values, and that's how you do basic math. We can also do math between 2 variables. So if we were to make variable x is equal to 5, and then variable y is equal to 9, we could go ahead and add these two together, x plus y, and that's going to give us 14. Go ahead and run our game. We can see it prints, and that's how you can do math with 2 variables. Alright, so now I went ahead and made 3 variables and 4 print statements. So now one of these print statements are going to give an error, so I want you to figure out which one it is. So your first guess could have been print statement number 1, which is printing out y, which y is equal to hello world. But it's perfectly fine for a variable to equal a string, since a variable can equal any type of value. So print statement 1 is good. So you could have also thought it was print statement number 3, because it's going ahead and multiplying the same variable twice. So this is completely fine. This is just 4 times 4. So it's actually the last print statement, which tries to go ahead and divide a number by a string, which you can't do. And if we run the game, you can see we get every single one of them prints out, except for the last one, which is telling us that we tried to divide a number and a string. Alright, now we're going to learn about functions. So we can create a function by doing local function, and now we put the name of the function, let's call it hello, and then a parentheses. Over here, do enter, and now it's going to be our function right here, which is going to close off at end. So in this function, let's go ahead and print hello world. So now if we try and go ahead and playtest our game, we're going to see that nothing prints. But this is because we need to first call our function. So to call the hello function, we just go down here and do hello, and then parentheses, which is going to call our function. So when the code gets down here, this is going to tell the script to run the hello function. So if we playtest our game, we can see it's going to print out hello world, and that's going to run our function. If we try to call our function before the script reads our function, so if we go over here and do hello, as we can see, we're going to get an error because the script first needs to see the function, and then you could call the function. So if we try to do this, we're attempting to call a null value because it hasn't been said yet. Remember, the script goes from top to bottom. In order to call a function, the script first needs to read the function, and then we can call the function. Functions also have parameters which go inside the parentheses right here. So let's say instead of printing hello world like this, let's just go ahead and copy hello world and then pass it in over here. So when we call our function, we could pass in as the first parameter hello world, and now over here in our function we can make this be text. So our first parameter is going to be text, and text is going to equal hello world. Parameters are basically like variables where you make the parameter equal whatever you're passing in. So the first parameter is equal to hello world. So now if we print text and run our game, that's going to go ahead and print hello world. We can also have multiple parameters. So let's go ahead and make this our first parameter 5, and then our second parameter 10. And if we change this up here, make our first parameter x and our second parameter y by adding in our comma. So right now, x is going to be equal to 5 and y is going to be equal to 10. So if we go ahead and do this, x times y, and run our game, we're going to get 50. We can also call our function multiple times, so let's call it again. And now we can actually pass in different numbers, so 4, and then comma 8 as our second parameter. Now x is going to be equal to 5, and y is going to be equal to 10 the first time we call our function. The second time we call our function, x is going to be equal to 4, and y is going to be equal to 8. So if we run our game, we could go ahead and see that in the output. We can also add in as many parameters as we want. There really is no limit, and you could just pass in as much as you want. It also doesn't matter that you pass in all of the values. So imagine I only passed in 3 values, but it's not going to error here even though there's 4 parameters, because it's just going to make b equal to nil. And nil basically just means it's equal to nothing. So if we go ahead and print out b, it's going to go ahead and be nil because we didn't pass in a 4th parameter. So now I want to go ahead and talk about if statements. So to make an if statement, let's go ahead and first make 2 variables. So let's go local x is going to equal 5, and then local y is going to equal 3. Now we can make an if statement by saying if x is equal to y, then enter print it is equal. So basically what this is going to do is if x is equal to y, then print is equal to. And we have to use 2 equal signs because 1 equal sign is basically trying to tell the script that we want x to equal y. If we have 2 equal signs, then that's going to tell the script to check if x is equal to y, and that's going to give us a true or false value, which is also known as a Boolean value. So if we go ahead and run our game, we can see that nothing printed because x was 5 and y was 3. If we make y also be equal to 5 and we run our game, we're going to see it's going to print is equal. Okay, I want to clear up Boolean values before I go on. So as I said before, x is equal to y. It's going to give us a true or false value. So let's go ahead and actually look at that right now. So if we print x is equal to y, it's basically going to tell our script to check if x is equal to y, which in this case it is. So if we go ahead and run our game, it's going to give us true. If we made y 4, and now we printed if x is equal to y, we're going to see that's going to give us a false value. Alright, now let's go back to our original if statement. We also have different checks. So right now this checks if x is equal to y. We can go ahead and replace this equal sign with a squiggly line. This is basically right under the escape. So what this does is it's going to be if x is not equal to y. So if we go ahead and print is not equal to, since x is 5 and y is 4, this should print because x is not equal to y. If we go ahead and run the game, see it prints out is not equal. We also have greater than, so if x is greater than y, it's going to print out is greater. So if we go ahead and run the game, since x is 5 and y is 4, it goes ahead and prints out is greater. We also have less than, and we have greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. So what this does is basically either x is less than or equal to y. So if we made y 5, this should go ahead and print because it is either less than or equal to. If we only had it as less than, it shouldn't print because it's only checking to see if x is less than y. So those are some other checks you could do with if statements. We also have else statements, which are basically a continuation of if statements. So you can make an else statement by going right after the if statement, right here on the end, changing it to else, and then enter. And let's say print is not equal. So if x is equal to y, then it should print is equal. Else, basically meaning if this is false, it's going to print is not equal. So right now, x is equal to 5 and y is equal to 5. So they are equal. So if we run the game, it prints is equal. We go ahead and change the value of y, make it 1. Now, this is going to be false. So if this is false, then it's going to print is not equal. So now it prints is not equal. So that's how you use else statements. We also have Elseif statements, which are basically a secondary if statement under the first if statement. So right now we're trying to check if x is greater than y. If it is, print is greater. Else, print it's less. But if both of the variables are the same, they should be equal. So what we could do is we could change this from an else statement to an else if statement and add in another condition. So if x is less than y, then we print is less. So if we go down here and change this from an and to an else statement, so else print is equal. So if x isn't greater than or less than, then x should be equal to. So now if we run our game, we can see it prints is equal. We can also have as much else if statements as we want under our first if statement. So if we change this to an else if and add in a different condition, x is equal to y, then print is equal. So how it's going to work is going to first check if x is greater than y, and if it's not, it's going to go down here and check if x is less than y, and if it's not, it's going to go down here and check if x is equal to y. And if we run our game, we can see it prints out is equal. Also, you can only have one else statement at the end of the if statement. So that's how you use else if statements. Just to clarify, else if and else statements come from the if statement. So if we were to try to do else, then it's not going to be able to work. If we try to do else if, it's not going to be able to work. So x is equal to y, then, and as you can see, it's going to give us an error because else if and else statements come from the if statement. So you need to have an if statement at the start to use the else if statements. Now that you know some of the basics of using scripts, let's use our script to manipulate our game. So if we go to our place, let's go ahead and spawn in a part, which is going to spawn it in the workspace. So this is where our part is in the workspace, and to the left right here we can see the properties tab, and these are all the properties of the part that we can actually change in our script. So if we go to our script, let's go ahead and make a variable for our part in the workspace. So to do this, let's go local, and then the name of the variable, let's call it part1, is equal to game, which is basically the whole explorer. So now we're searching the whole explorer, dot. So what dot means is search in game. So we're going to be searching in the game, and inside of the game is the workspace. So we do workspace, and now we're going to do dot. So workspace dot, so searching inside of the workspace, we're going to go ahead and find our part in the workspace. So part. So now this variable is basically our part. So it leads straight to our part. Now we're going to go ahead and change the brick color of our part with a script. So let's do our variable part1 dot. So now we're searching in part1, and in part1 is all of these properties. So let's do brick color, and to change the brick color we have to do equals brick color dot new parentheses, and now a string of the brick color we want. So let's say we want camo. So now we're gonna search in the workspace and make a variable of our part, and that's gonna be part1. And then in part1 is all of the properties. So we're gonna choose brick color, and then change the brick color to a new color, which is gonna be camo. So if we run our game, we can see that our part changed colors. You can also go ahead and see this by checking in the workspace in our part, and here in the properties you can see the brick color changed to camo. Okay, let's go ahead and change up some more properties of our part. So if we look at the properties, you can see it also has cast shadow. Cast shadow is different than brick color because it's a check mark. So it's an on and off. So right now, cast shadow is true. Turn it off, cast shadow is false. So let's go ahead and change that up in our script. If we do part1, which is our part, and search inside of it, find cast shadow. And then we're going to make cast shadow, since it's an on and off, a true or false, we want it to be false. So let's do cast shadow false. That's going to turn it off when we run the game. You can also go ahead and see material. So let's say we want to change our material. So part1 and search for material. Notice material is a list. So what that's going to mean is that we're going to have to use enum. So basically enum is going to search for lists. So since material is on the list, we have to search for the material list. So we could go ahead and search for that. So now in the material list, we're going to find the material we want to use, and let's say we want to use foil as our material. That's going to go ahead and search in the material list, find foil, and it's going to change it as the new material. Also go down here and change the name of the part. So the name of the part is a text box. So part1, search for a name, then make it equal. So to change the name, we're going to need to use a string. So we want the part to be called green part. Basically what our script is going to do is going to change the brick color to camo. It's going to turn off the shadow of the part. It's going to change the material to foil, and it's going to change the name to green part. If we run our game, we're going to see all of these changes. As you can see, the part is camo, it's foil, and it doesn't have a shadow. If we go up here to the workspace, we can see that the name of a part has changed. You can also see all these changes inside of the Properties tab. So now I wanted to give you a challenge. So what you got to do is you got to add a new part into the game and rename it to Part 2. So you could go ahead and rename a part or anything by going to it. So let's say Part 1, right-clicking, and renaming it. So I've renamed this to Part 1 so it doesn't conflict with the other part, because if they're both named the same thing, the script won't know which one is which. Then with the script, you're going to go ahead and change the brick color to really red, turn on anchored, change the material of the part to cracked lava, and then change the shape or the part type of the part to a ball. So go ahead and try your best, pause the video, and then I'll do it right after. Okay, so here's how you could do it. So first we need to add a new part into the game and call it Part 2. So let's do that. Let's go to our game, go over here, add a new part, and here we could go ahead and right click, rename it, or we could search inside the part's properties for the name property and change it right here. Let's call it Part 2. So now if we go back to our script, you can also see we changed it to Part 2 here in the workspace. So now we have to, with a script, change this brick color, turn on anchored, the material, and the shape. So first let's go ahead and make a new variable of our Part 2. We're going to search in the game, and we're going to search in the workspace, and find our Part 2. Now let's go ahead and change its properties. So the first requirement was to change its brick color to really red. So let's do that right now. Brick color. It's going to equal brick color dot new parentheses, and then in a string, really red. So now we change the brick color. Second requirement is to turn on anchored. So anchored is a true or false value. So all we had to do was to equal to true in this case, because we wanted to turn on anchored in our part. So now we want to change the material to cracked lava. So remember, to change the material, it's a list, so we have to use enum dot material, search the material list, and search for cracked lava. So now it's going to change the material to cracked lava. And our last requirement, which is kind of tricky, was to change the shape of the part. So part 2 dot shape. Remember, it's a list, so now we got to do enum, but the name of the list isn't shape, it's part type. So we do part type dot ball, and that's going to change our shape to a ball. So now if we go ahead and play our game, you can see all of our changes here. So now if we go to workspace, part 2, see it's really red, cracked lava. You can also see the shape has been changed to a ball, and the anchored has been turned on. So what anchored does is that means the ball cannot be acted upon, so it can't move. Let's actually go ahead and test that out right now. Go ahead and get our part and move it up. So if we play our game, since anchored is on, our part won't fall due to gravity because it's anchored to that one point. So good job if you got it. If you didn't, that's fine. So that's basically how you change up properties with a script. Okay, so I talked about functions and if statements. So now let's go ahead and use them together to manipulate our part. So first, let's go ahead and search for our part. Local part1 is going to equal. So specifically for the workspace, we don't need to do game and search in the game to find the workspace. We could just do workspace. But for something else, let's say players, we can't just search players. We need to do game.players to search inside the players. So let's do workspace dot part1, and now we're going to create a local function, and we're going to call it presets, and we're going to have the parentheses, enter, and let's make our parameter preset. So now we're going to pass in the preset parameter, and we're going to use an if statement to determine what we change in our part. So let's do if preset is equal to 1, then we're going to make part1's brick color, and it's going to equal to really red. Let's go ahead and copy that. So let's do else if preset is equal to 2, then let's go ahead and paste it. We're gonna make the brick color be camo. Let's do another else if preset is equal to 3, then we're gonna go ahead and make the brick color cyan. And now else, if we don't have a preset, we're just gonna go ahead and fall back on and make it be fog. So if the preset is 1, it's gonna change it to really red, 2 camo, 3 cyan, and if we don't pass in a preset, we're gonna fall back on fog. So now here, remember we got a caller function, so we're gonna call preset, and we're gonna pass in our preset. So let's say we wanted camo, the camo preset. Let's pass in 2. We go ahead and run our game. We see our part is now camo. If we wanted to have a cyan, we could just go ahead, pass in 3, and that's gonna make it cyan. If we didn't pass in a preset, that's gonna go ahead and fall back on fog. So if we play our game, you can see now our part is fog. So that's how you combine functions and if statements to go ahead and change the properties of your game. Okay, so now to end off the video, I want to do a final challenge, which is really hard, but if you try your best, you might be able to get it. So let's go through it. First, you need to get both parts 1 and 2 and color code them. So let's just do that right now. Let's go ahead and get part 2 down here and color code both of these parts. Let's make this one maroon. Let's make this one sea green. So now we have our 2 parts color coded so we can distinguish them. Let's go to our script. So the first thing you got to do is you got to make a preset function with 2 arguments, which are going to be preset and part. So you're going to be passing in the preset and the part. Now you're going to first check what part is being changed, part 1 or 2. So the part that you pass in, you're going to first check if it's either the part 1 or the part 2. If no parts are picked, so if you don't pass in a part, then change both part 1 and part 2. Next, after you choose what part, so after we figure out what part we're going to be changing, or parts, then we're going to change the material according to preset 1 or 2. So preset 1 would change the material to foil, and preset 2 would change the material to ice. If no presets are picked, so if you pass in nil, then it should default to plaster. So this is a really hard challenge, but try your best. Pause the video right now, and then I'll explain how to do it. Don't worry if you weren't able to figure it out. This was a really hard challenge, but now I'm going to go ahead and explain it. So first, let's get both of our parts. So let's create 2 variables, one for part 1 and the other one for part 2. So now we got our 2 variables, and now let's go ahead and make a preset function with 2 arguments. And arguments are just the parameters. So let's go ahead and do that. So local function, presets, pass in our first argument, and then our second one, and now that's our function. So first, we need to check what part is being changed, part 1 or part 2. So let's make an if statement. So if the part we're passing in is equal to part 1, then we're going to change part 1. Else if the part we're passing in is equal to part 2, then we're going to change part 2. Else, so if no parts are picked, then we got to change both parts. So that's what we're going to do under the else. So now we have to change the material of the selected parts according to the preset 1 or 2. So we're going to have 2 presets. So we're going to have to check what preset we have. So first we're checking what part it is. Now we're going to go ahead and make an if statement inside of this if statement. So if preset, the preset we pass in, is equal to 1, then we're going to change the material of our part to foil. And since it's in part 1, let's go ahead and change part 1's material. Let's go ahead and get enum.material, change it to foil. Else if the preset is 2, then let's go ahead and copy this. We got to change it to ice. And if we don't pass in a preset, if we pass in nil, we got to default it to plaster. So else, let's go ahead and default it to plaster. Now we basically have to do the same thing we did here, but for part 2. So let's just go ahead and copy paste this onto here and change this up. So we're, instead of changing up part 1, we're changing up part 2. Now let's go ahead and in the else statement, paste it as well. And now let's also add part 2, so we change up both parts. Let's go ahead and put that in like that. So let me actually go ahead and zoom out a bit. So now, what we're doing is we're getting both of our parts, and we're making a function with presets. So if our preset is 1, we're going to make the part we selected be foil. If it's 2, we're going to make it be ice. And if it isn't anything, if we just passed in nil, it's going to be plaster. So let's see how that would look. So remember, we've got a caller function. So down here, let's do presets, and say we want to send in preset 1, and we want to go ahead and send in part 2. So remember, if we go to our game, part 2 is the maroon. And since we sent in preset 1 with part 2, it's going to go here. Is it part 1? It's not. Else if, is it part 2? It is. Let's see what preset it is. We send in preset 1. It's going to check preset 1. Yep. And then it's going to change part 2's material to foil. So if we run the game, go ahead and see, part 2's material is now foil. Let's go ahead and do that instead for part 1. We're going to pass in part 1. So now it's going to check part 1. And let's go ahead and change the preset. Let's make it 2. So part 1. Yep, we passed in part 1. Is it preset 1? Nope. Let's go down here. Is it preset 2? Yep. Let's change part 1's to ice. So now if we go ahead, run our game, part 1 should change to ice. So you can see it changes to ice. Now let's say we don't pass in a part, and we don't pass in a preset. So now it's going to go, is it part 1? Nope. Is it part 2? Nope. That means we're going to select and change both parts at the same time. Is it preset 1? No. Is it preset 2? No. So that must mean we gotta default it to plaster. So if we go ahead and play the game, we're gonna see both of these have changed their materials to plaster. Great job if you were able to solve this. Don't worry about it if you didn't. This was a really hard challenge, but that's how you do it right there. So before I close off this video, I just wanted to give you a very helpful resource you can use while learning to script. So if you go over here to the Roblox Create, go to Learn, and go on Experiences. Now down here on Scripting, it's basically going to have everything to do with scripting in Roblox Studio. So let's say I wanted to go ahead and learn about functions, so I just go to Scripting, Functions right here. And it's going to teach me what a function is, how to use it. It's going to give me plenty of examples. Overall, it's a great resource to use while learning to script, so use it as you see fit. Those are some of the basics when it comes to scripting in Roblox Studio. I am planning on making more scripting tutorials in the future. If you found this video useful, consider giving it a like and maybe subscribing. Have a good rest of your day, and goodbye.